Hello, everyone, and welcome to this second session of our Youth Connect Live. My name is Grace Mwinga. I work with the British Council as a Senior Gender Advisor for Africa, and I will be your host for today. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, Youth Connect Live is a series of online live sessions for young people around the world and basically aimed at developing their skills to connect with themselves, the community, and the wider audience. I'm joining you from Nairobi, Kenya, and I invite you to just write in the Q&A section or in the comment section where you are joining us from. So if you can, kindly please go ahead and do that for us. So this afternoon, we will have time to respond to the questions that are already received. And as you know, this is a second of the two connected sessions on public speaking. And so this session is aimed at addressing the questions that we all shared during the interview with Miss Miriam on the 18th of March on the topic of public speaking. So the session on public speaking is mostly going to focus on why it matters, how it builds confidence, and the practical steps as young people can take to become stronger communicators. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to reintroduce Miss Miriam Maku Amisa, a leadership coach and a corporate trainer. Welcome, Miriam, to this second session.
Hi, thank you so much, Grace.
Yeah, and nice to see you again.
Nice seeing you too.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And good to have all our participants on the call as well. Thank you
Amazing.
for the emojis. Thank you.
Wonderful. Miriam, are you joining us from Ghana as well?
Yes, I'm joining from Ghana.
All right. So I think we can get started on the first question. The first question to you, Miriam, that we received from the audience from last time is how can I motivate audiences easily to pay more attention?
Okay, so this I guess is into whether you're doing a virtual or whether you're doing an in-person. Typically, when you're doing a virtual, for instance, as we are having right now, you may not get to see who you're speaking to see their facial expressions, etc. So you could use questions, for instance, to draw people out, or a very bold statement of fact concerning the topic that you're discussing, or maybe a short story. So I could share a short story, or I could put in the box, in the chat box, how are you feeling today? Show me with an emoji what your thoughts are. And I remember when I'm doing my financial literacy trainings, for instance, I asked if your financial state was a song, what would it be? And you have all sorts of interesting comments coming through. So you get people, you motivate people using some of these activities to get them on board, to get their attention so that you can work with them. And the secret to attention also is relevance. So whatever it is that you're going to use to draw them in should be relevant to the topic that you're about to discuss.
Good point. That's a very good point, Miriam, because sometimes I think there's a tendency to throw in any catchy statement without relating it to the topic of discussion.
Yeah, yeah. There's one thing I would also want to add, the use of your pitch or your voice and
Yeah.
pauses.
Yeah.
There's something very powerful when you use a pause. And I just used one. It helps your audience to absorb whatever it is that you're telling them. It gives them time to think through what you just told them. And it's a powerful way of getting attention as well. Or you could just lower the voice and then raise it up when there's some kind of excitement you want to generate within the audience. So you can use this both for virtual and your in-person meetings. If it's in person, it's much easier because you get to see the expressions and the body language, and then you know that I have these people on board. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Miriam.
You're welcome.
So to the second question that we received from the audience, it says, please, could you talk a bit more about how I can overcome fear and develop my confidence to be in control?
Okay. So let me just first say that fear is would always come when you have to stand before people, because then there's always that self-doubt that am I ready enough? Am I prepared enough to do this? So even before I put on my camera, there were a few butterflies in my stomach, but I have overcome them because I've met Grace that is smiling at me. So I know I have a warm audience. And then the emojis made it comfortable for me. But just to let you know that fear never goes away, but it's the awareness that I know that this can happen. So what do I do? So I love your question that how do I overcome that fear? The first for me is that prepare. Prepare, 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 prepare. Make sure that you know your content really well. You can't control the audience. How they react is not in your control. So what makes you most nervous is the things that you cannot control. So control and work with what is in your power. And what is in your power is the content you're about to present and how valuable that is to the audience. The second one that I would normally use to connect as well and help me to overcome the fear, because once I connect, then I know that I have an audience who like me, and that I typically would use a common ground to connect. So there was a time that I was asked to present to a group of people about retirement, how to plan for your retirement, etc. And this was a group of reverend ministers who had retired. And this was me going to speak to very elderly men and women about their retirement who had been on retirement as long as I have been alive. So that immediately throws you off because you're thinking, oh God, how do I get to connect with these people who are so much older than I am? But it just came to me that, well, my father is a reverend minister. He's on retirement. And so I used his story to start. And before I knew it, they just warmed up to me because they began to see me as their daughter. They began to see me as family, because then I could relate to them. So that immediately takes away the fear. So whoever it is you're going to talk to, try to understand your audience. Sorry, and then what will connect with them.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the two cues that I think you can use to overcome the fear and all the butterflies in the stomach. If it doesn't work, take warm water. It kills the butterflies early.
It's true, and it buys you a bit of time in conversations as well.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for that response. And I think you also mentioned it in the last session on on the 18th, where you
Yeah.
talked about, beginning with a story, and you've given the same reflection here, and we
Yeah.
can see the consistency of that,
Yeah.
advice and support to the young people.
Yeah.
Thanks, Miriam.
You're welcome.
We'll move on to the third question. This question is very interesting and particularly close to my heart. So
Okay.
the third question says, do you feel that there are more barriers for women when it comes to public speaking? If so, what are these and how can they be overcome?
That's an interesting question. And I think it's the right time to talk about it as we're celebrating Women in March as well. Honestly, I think yes, there are some barriers for women, and a lot of it has to do also with culture and
Mm,
how we have been brought up. So we sort of believe that we need permission to speak up because growing up, even from my African descent, you're
mm,
taught that the place of the woman is in the kitchen and the man has to speak first. The man. So these are internal barriers that already limit us as we're growing. So we double guess ourselves and want to be extra prepared before we want to speak up, and we want to be given permission to speak. And so
mm,
that is a huge barrier for
mm,
women when we decide we want to speak up or when it comes to public speaking. So what
mm,
I'll tell you is give yourself that permission. Don't wait for anyone to give you that permission. You have the right to be in the room at that time. So give yourself the permission to speak up and take space. Okay. And the second one also is credibility.
mm,
Women are often questioned in the ways that men aren't.
mm,
So a woman speaks with authority, and then it's said she comes off a bit as aggressive. But when a man does that, it's leadership, it's strength. So even on that basis, you again want to be sure before you speak because you want to see whether you're credible enough. And it's okay. So always work at it. Work at your credibility at your own pace by showing up consistently for what you believe in, what you are passionate about. And then people begin to assign that to you. So if I consistently show up, for instance, on LinkedIn as someone that speaks about personal finance or financial literacy, and I speak
mm,
about leadership, then I show up consistently speaking about those topics. And then with time, I build the track record and the credibility that goes with it. So I begin to feel that I have that credibility and I have that right to speak on that subject. The third one for me is visibility.
mm,
Growing up, you would rarely see women that stand on the podium to speak, whether it's in church, whether it's at school, and then even worse, when you get into the corporate world and women in leadership, just a hand pick a handful of them at the top level. So there are not much examples for you to look at, and that in itself is a barrier. So you begin to wonder, really, what do I have to do to get there? Maybe it's just a select few that have to be there, but no, in fact, the select few got there because they broke the ceiling for us to look up to them. So that can be an excuse, that can be a barrier. But now we're getting more people, more women who stand up to speak. So you can also look up to them and speak anyway. You find communities where your voice are welcomed, you practice, and then you'll be able to get strong enough to speak in those rooms. So seek
mm.
out women speakers who you like and you love the way they speak, the way they handle themselves, and then let them mentor you from afar. And with time, you begin to show up. Those barriers, actually, you can overcome them. And before you know it, you will be speaking up as well.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. And that's very true. And I think it ties very well to the earlier question on fear. And sometimes these
Yeah.
barriers can actually put in fear, and they
Mm-hmm.
cause you to actually, stammer or stumble with your words. So I like your
Yeah.
response to that.
Yeah. And I'm sure there are some young men and other men on the line. I think what you can do as well is that you also have a role to play. Notice who gets interrupted in meetings. Notice those who are minimized and they shy away from speaking, and use your voice to make space for them. And so even for the men on the call, the young men, it's great that you have the voice and you have the space. So use your voice as well to push some of the women out who you realize that don't find the psychological safety to speak up, and push them to do that. You'll be amazed the kind of ideas they have to share and how well they would articulate it and make the ideas better.
Mm. Indeed, collective action for sure.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
certainly.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the fourth question, Miriam. And participants, please do share in your comments. We may not have time to answer any further questions, but please would love to hear your comments from this session. Please do put them on the chat or on the Q&A session, and we'll be glad to interact with you there. So the fourth question, Miriam, is about preparation and memorization. So someone says, please share your opinion in order to separate preparation from memorization. Okay. The specific question that they ask is, to be precise, what level of memorization is allowed or helpful as part of preparation?
Okay. So what I think that's a great question as well. You certainly need to do some memorization. And what my approach is to write out whatever speech I'm going to deliver. If it's an interview I'm going for, I try now in the age of AI, you can be able to get a number of questions that are likely to be asked concerning the interview or the role you're going for. So I like to write out my responses. Now, the first thing that I do is to know how that relates to the work or my experience. And so I have that experience in mind because yes, I got that experience. So that is easy to remember. But your opening line and keywords that you know would be expected, especially given the role that you are applying for or given the audience you're going to speak to. So you want to at least memorize your first line to the question, and then you want to end powerfully. And when I say ending powerfully, it's ending so that it sticks, your message sticks. And when they leave or your audience leaves, they are not going to say, oh, that was a good one, but I'm not too sure what she said. They have to say that is a good one. And I like what she said about that. So whenever, if you need to prepare, and the preparation comes with having a strategy around the structure of your presentation. So you can have speaking notes if you have slides, for instance, that you can refer to, but the opening lines, the closing lines, and particular words that you know would relate to whoever is listening is important to memorize. So that balance will help. If you try to memorize everything, you get stuck because the brain is not meant for memorizing stuff. It doesn't. And you certainly miss one word and then you are stuck. So beginning line, keywords that are relatable to your audience, and a powerful closing. That's what I would advise.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Miriam. And I hear a lot about balancing between preparation and just memorizing the keywords
Yeah.
that will inspire your brain. Yeah.
Yes,
Wonderful.
yes, exactly.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Miriam. The fifth question that we have today speaks a lot about storytelling. So it
Mm,
says, how do you use storytelling to make presentation more engaging?
mm, mm. I mean, without storytelling, you are likely to leave your audience with very little to remember.
Yeah.
And I learned this from, because I'm a salesperson as well, from
Okay.
sales pitches. If you want to sell an idea, a product, a solution,
Mhm.
there's a way that when you use personal stories, you can appeal to the emotions of your audience. And
Mhm.
so in terms of engaging, when you're speaking publicly or you're having a presentation, storytelling is so powerful. Okay, it's the oldest technology or way that people use in public speaking because of how powerful it is. And from old, people would sit around a fire and tell stories because of how engaging it was, and then how it gets the lessons to stick,
Mhm.
especially. Okay, so when you're using storytelling, it makes your presentation very engaging, more powerful even when that story is personal to you. So again, another time I had to present to a group of people about financial literacy. I do personal finance a lot.
Mhm.
And before the night before, I was just wondering, I'm going to speak to a whole institution, to the top management. And it's a financial institution, so they likely know more than I do. So I was just asking myself, what can I share? And then I remembered a man that I know and I love so much, a story about how he started and how he planned his life so well that at retirement, he was able to secure property for his children. And this man is not the wealthiest man in the world. In fact, he started as a carpenter and rose through the ranks. And guess who I was talking about? I was talking about my father.
Mhm.
And so I landed on that fact that this old man I was telling them about was the man who raised me. And that immediately connected with the audience to say that, okay, first of all, we like you. We know that you're real. And then also, whatever message you're trying to deliver actually does work. And when I use the principles you're about to share, it would help me. So before you are done, you have engaged them in such a way that they are willing to take an action immediately after the engagement. So I would say that storytelling, yes, certainly try to find something that is, it may not have to be personal. It could be something you heard, but
Mhm.
certainly the most powerful stories are the personal ones because again, it makes your audience relate better and they are likely to remember the story long after you are gone. You'll be surprised that the only thing they remembered about the entire presentation was that story and how it relates to them and the action they took after that.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Miriam. I see we are quite ahead of time, and I want to
yeah,
sneak in a question there.
certainly.
That speaks a lot to fear. What happens when someone forgets during their public presentation, public speaking? Maybe you can speak a little bit about your experience. How do you make a comeback when you've forgotten what you wanted to speak to?
Okay. So it all boils down to preparation, like I
Oh,
said, and having a structure.
mhm.
So always have a structure in mind. And when a structure certainly just speaks to your beginning,
Yeah.
the middle of the content itself and how it's arranged, and then your closing. So if you do it in such a way that it follows a certain structure, missing one of them does not throw you off balance entirely. And that's why I speak about the memorization. Memorization has the tendency to throw you off because you've memorized it in such a way that it's this after this after this, but you don't have a connection
Yeah.
such that if I forget the first one, I know it's the second one that comes after it. But if I don't have that connection and I memorize it, then I don't know what exactly has to come after this because I did not prepare to connect it. Because for every presentation, for me, what I have learned in public speaking, there has to be a connection on how you start your audience, engage them, and then land them.
Yeah.
There has to be that flow. So, yes, you will forget. In fact, most of the time you would forget. But when you know the flow of your presentation, because you have structured it in such a way that this comes after this, and it's a story that you're pulling your audience along with, then forgetting something should not make you unstable or begin to fret at that point in time. You just move on to the next one. And you realize that as you're speaking about the next one, you remember what you forgot and then you talk about it. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Miriam. So we've
So,
come to the end of our time together, but I want to invite you, Miriam, to just give, closing words and for the audiences that are joining us today before I officially close us out. Any final thoughts, words relating to public speaking?
oh, final thoughts.
Yes.
Ah, it's been an exciting time talking and sharing my thoughts on public speaking. And I think from last week, one thing that we shared was how valuable a skill public speaking is. And so for everyone here, do not shy away from it. You have every right to be in the room that you find yourself. And so don't shy away. Give yourself that permission to voice out your wonderful and brilliant ideas. Okay. And also, don't shy away from any opportunity that you're given because you have to start small. No one standing on the big platform started immediately from that place and then realized, I'm here. No. They started small. They started in their community churches. They started in their clubs. They started in their communities. They started at home, just playing with it and getting feedback. And I think my final one is going to be on asking for feedback anytime you're done with the presentation. Feedback is a gift. Feedback is a gift. So anytime someone tells you, this didn't go too well, do not get offended. That person just gifted you with a priceless opportunity to improve, to get better. And then you watch yourself bloom and grow on the stage. Thank you so much for having me, Grace.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Miriam, for honoring us with your time. So everyone, we've come to the end of our time together. We really appreciate the conversation that we've had in the past, this session and in the last session. We do ask that you take time to look at the feedback form that has been posted on the chat. Kindly give us feedback. Miriam has just told us it's a gift, and that would be fantastic for us to help us improve on the future sessions. So the feedback form will also be sent around after the session along with the recording. So please do take a minute or two, give us feedback on the session, and we'll be glad to receive it. We also ask that you look out for the next Youth Connect live session, which will be in May, and we'll be continuing with the theme of leadership. So thank you very much for joining us, and we can show some love to Miriam even as we come to the
Yeah.
end. Thank you,
You've been
Miriam.
amazing. You've made me feel so warm with your emojis. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and bye-bye,
Bye.
everyone.